So guys, I already created a tool here now. The thing is, and I ended up with like 30 videos just to create this tool, which would have you taken a month because I'm uploading these videos per day. So this is obviously unacceptable. So I'm going to recreate this now. This is why I have a lot of stuff in here which you don't have, but we're going to make a simpler version of that, which we can do in a few videos. So just simply ignore everything I have here. I'm going to make myself right click a new folder here so you don't get confused by all the things I have here. And I'm going to call this YouTube, and I'm going inside here. And this is the only thing that matters to you right now. So the idea is that we are going into the outliner here and we can create a folder, and we call this one main underscore, and we just call this, let's call it room, okay? And inside this folder, we're going to create another folder, and we're going to call this geometry underscore room. And we're going to create another one, which we call subtract underscore room. And those should be in the main folder. So all those subfolders should be inside this folder here. We're going to create another one. We call this collision underscore room. And we're going to create another one, which we're going to call combine underscore room. Now the idea is that inside this folder, we obviously have those folders, yeah? So we know in which sort of way we're working. We know we are currently working with the room here. In this folder, we'll go to collisions for the room. In the geometry, we'll go all the geometry we're going to use for this room, essentially. In subtract, we're just going to subtract things from it. And the combine will combine everything. So the combine will essentially grab the geometry, it will grab the subtract, it will grab the collisions and make a thing out of that. First of all, we need a blueprint here. So we're right clicking here and we're going to create a blueprint up here, a dynamic generated mesh actor. And we're going to call this 0 underscore because I want this to be all the way in the front. This is why I put a 0 in there. Parent geo underscore for geometry, right? Parent, because we also will have some children, combine. All right, this will be the name. We're going to open it up. And now we can right click this here and make a child out of that, from that. And we're going to call this, actually, let's keep it the same name, just get rid of the parent and child underscore and get rid of the child in the end. And a 1 in the front here. So then we have a nice naming. Left thing is the parent, right thing is the child. Mainly we're going to work inside the child, but there are things we want to add to the parent. So all of the children we are going to create will have those things. But let's open the child first of all. Let's go inside here. We are going to see something like this. Maybe if you don't, doesn't matter. But if you see something like this here, just open full blueprint editor and you will end up somewhere here. You're going to see a few things here. I want to ignore those for now. Let's just not use them. And we're going to right click here and create ourselves a rebuild generated mesh event. Now this thing, I know I need to use this because this is from the add-on, from the geometry add-on. So and the very first thing we need to understand is that this thing will trigger every time we change something. So if we take our combine, drag it in, it will not have any geometry because we didn't give it any, yeah? And we have it in the outline here. Now we gave it a folder, so we can put it inside the folder here for now. And this thing will do something every time we move this thing around or change something about it. We can see this if we drag out from here and print string, and we compile this. You need to always compile when you change something. And you can see it's already printing when we compile it. And if we move it, you can see it's always printing hello. So this is how the thing works. Whenever you change something, whenever you move it, this will do something for us. Let's delete the print string. Now the problem is, because we're going to also have collisions, we're doing something with collisions, we're doing something with geometry, right? We want to like combine things together. This thing should also trigger when we're not moving it. It should like always trigger for us. This is relatively specific to the add-on, and they said they would add this in another way, so you can like create a separate event or something for that. But for now we have to sort of cheese it, just so we can always nicely update it. And I'm going a bit deeper right now with that, but we sort of have to do it in order to nicely work with everything. So we have to create ourselves another thing here on the blueprint. There is a blueprint interface. I wouldn't worry too much about understanding this right now. This is just something we have to do for now. And the interface is just there so we can communicate between blueprints properly. But let's just create this and call this editor tick. And we're going to open this up. And up here, we're going to create ourselves another editor tick. Make sure you write it exactly like that. And down here, you can then call it an editor. And we need to compile this. I'm going to explain this in a second. We want to add this editor tick to our parent, so all the children also have it. If we in the parent go to the class settings, we can add an interface. We just created an interface. And we can over here add now the editor tick. I have two because I tested it already. And now it's in here. We compile this and we can see it's also here in interface now. Meaning we added this thing here to our parent. And if we go to the child, it will also have it. Because the child is a child of the parent. So why did we do that? Why did we add it? Now we can close the parent because we added the interface. The interface is in there. We can also use it now in the child. Why did we add it? Because we can now grab it. We can now editor tick. We can now get the event editor tick. All right. And here we can see it's an interface. And the reason why we added this here is because we can tell it how often and when it should do something, when it should tick. Whenever I say tick, I mean it triggers, yeah, execute something, it does something. This is whenever I say tick. So, but if we now print this here, print string, and we compile this, it will do essentially nothing. It will not print. We don't see anything here. We need to tell it first of all when and how fast it should trigger. Now we're going to do this in the construction script. The construction script is pretty much the same thing as this one here, where it triggers whenever you change something. It's essentially the same, but this one is from the add-on. It has another option here. And this one is the construction script is built in and does essentially the same thing. So whenever you change something, it ticks. And there is a thing called set timer by function name. And whenever we change something, this here will trigger. And why do we want to set a timer by a function name? Now, because the editor tick is a function and we added this to the parent. So we also have it in the child. And here we added this editor tick with a function to our parent. And we have this function now in here because this is the editor tick we added. And this editor tick has a function. So we can trigger this function inside here, which we added to the parent, which also has a child by its name. So if we call this editor tick and we give it a time from, let's say 1 second, don't go 0 with that, you don't want it. And we're going to check looping, so it constantly does it. And we compile this, you can see it triggered once when we compile it. And if we now go to the event graph, ooh, it's ticking all the time. Because as soon as this one's ticked, it will say that this function, which we added to the parent, which also has the child, which is also in the child, will constantly trigger. And we can see it's constantly, every second, printing a hello. And with that, we can constantly trigger one thing we have in the editor here. All right, those are the bases we have here. Let's close all of those windows. And we're going to right click here and create ourselves a folder. And we call this one combine. And we're going to put our combine things inside here. Now we can create ourselves another blueprint, and it will be a dynamic mesh editor again. And this one is going to be, what do we actually call the other one? Let's just copy the name here. And I'm going to orientate myself on that so I have a nice naming scheme. So geo parent combine. No, this will be geometry. So here is where we actually create our geometry. And we're doing the same thing where we create children from it. And whenever we create a child, we can change it to another geometry, whatever we want, right? We could make stairs, we could make a donut, whatever. And then we use this and the combine will grab it and combine things for us. And I'm going to right away make a child from that. And I'm going to also rename this here child, right? And I want to give it a 1 in the front. And I'm essentially working with both all the time. If I have something I know all the children will need anyway, I'm going to put it in the parent. So let's open both of them up here. So be always aware which one I'm working in, if I'm in the parent or the child. So let's go with the child in the event graph. And we're doing the same thing here, rebuild on generate mesh. Now, like I said, this thing triggers whenever we do something with it. Let's drag the child inside here and put a child, because it's a geometry, inside the geometry room. And we can just for visualization print it out, compile it, and if we now move this, it's printing a lot. So the first thing I want to do is just create a simple box. Yeah, we just want to create a box which we can control. You can imagine this target mesh here as just a simple object which holds a mesh, right? Our object is a container which contains a mesh and some other information. So rather than target mesh, I would imagine this to be like the actual object. And now the first thing, we can right click this here, exactly here on the pin, promote a variable. Aha, I create a variable. Why and what is that? Now all this will do, we can grab this out here and we can get it and we can set it. Meaning we can override it and we can get it. And currently here we are overriding it. Meaning all we're doing here is when this triggers, we're going to save this thing inside here. Meaning we can always later just simply get it without like having giant strings somewhere, yeah, to connect it. So we can just like get it here nicely. Now what I usually do is I'm grabbing out here and I'm making a sequence. A sequence is a very simple thing. It triggers the first thing, then it triggers the second thing. So it would be the same thing as connecting things in a row. It's not triggering at the same time, it's triggering in a row. It's just a bit nicer to organize things. And we're going to grab it from the first one and we can write, or you know what, let's scroll down and under G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, E, Geometry Script. Here we have all the things or most of the things we're working with. This is all specific to this add-on we enabled, to the Geometry Script add-on. But we are obviously also going to use things from the outside a little bit. For example, math, plus, minus, subtract, because those things are obviously already in there. But here you can see the main things, and there is somewhere primitives. And you can see the primitives which already are built for us. For example, we have stairs here, we have a disk, a cylinder, a cone, a capsule, etc. And we want to append box. We just want to create a simple box. Now the first thing we see here is a target mesh. It needs to know in which object should this box be built. And well, we have an object here, right? So object saved in this variable, and we plug this in here. Now it knows where to go. If we drag this out and compile this, we have a box. Why? Because we dragged our geo box in which we did this thing here inside the editor in our geo, right? Now we have a few more options here. We want to be able to control this in the editor. You can want to scale the box and whatever. And you can see we have a transform here. Though how do we transform that? You can see we have a transform here, but we don't actually need a transform here because we can just simply grab the whole thing. What we're grabbing here is not essentially the cube, it is the whole blueprint, right? Here we could only change the cube. It doesn't matter to us for now. So what I want to do here is first of all control the dimensions and like the size and whatever. How do we do that? Now we need a variable for that. So we're going to create ourselves a variable here, and here we can click on that. Could also click on here. This is the overall settings for this variable. So let's just do it on the right side here. All right. So we create a vector. If we compile this, we're going to see, oh, we have some numbers down here. X, Y, Z, R, G, B. Yeah. So just like coordinates. And we're going over to the left here and we're going to rename this, and we call this box space draw. We can also drag this out and get it. So we can do things with it, right? Now I want you to take a look. We can compile this here. And if we instance editable, check this and compile it. And we go back to our editor and select our geometry child, which we are currently in, right? And we scroll down, or actually here in default, we can see the box draw. The box draw, which we just created. Meaning we can, from the editor, control this very variable. If we make this variable with it selected, right? Show 3D widget and compile it. You can see, we got a thing here. A thing we can drag around beside the actual blueprint itself. This here is the variable. You can also see the box draw changing when I'm moving it around. So if we now break this here into its individual numbers, so we can access X, Y, Z separately. We can just drag those into X, Y, and Z and compile it and see how our box got changed. We select this now and we drag this around. We can see, we can manually mess around with our box. Though it's not quite reacting what I want this thing here to sit on the corner properly. So we're going to do a little bit of math. Now we see the origin is at the bottom. What is the origin? If we select it, we can see the origin sits at the bottom. So it's center point, yeah. And you can see if we drag Z, it is actually accurate. It sits on the right height. Just that Y, and X are off. So meaning we have to modify X and Y a little bit. If we here in front multiply this by half of it, so okay, yeah, there's a thing where like there are two break vectors, so we have to break vector again. See, this one doesn't connect, and this one here actually connects. It's weird. And let's just connect those here instead. And we multiply this by half of it, but not Z. Z stays 1, but multiplying any number by 0.5 will be half of it. Compile this. We're going to see that now, well, it's just half of it, right? It like reacts with like half the strength. And if we now multiply X and Y by 2 again, we're essentially getting back to what we had, right? So essentially nothing will change. But we can now move this thing, the whole box, over. So this side here sits at the origin and the corner sits right here. For that we have to transform. It's very simple. We're just also going to break this here. And we're going to make vector. And we can connect X and Y here and put this into the transform. Like that. Let's compile this and take a look what happens. And like I said, it moved the box over, so the corner perfectly sits at the origin and our box draw is perfectly here. And now when we quickly delete this from the viewport and drag it back in, we can grab the box draw here, make it wide, make it high, right? Easy to control. Though I want to give it a default value, so when we drag this in, it's not like invisible to us. We can change the default value of our box draw by just simply selecting it and giving it a default down here, which I'm going to do 50, 50, 50. And let's compile this. With that, if we delete it and drag it back in inside our folder, we're going to see we have a box right away and we can just simply grab that thing and modify it. Yay, we can modify a box.
Hey!